911, what is your emergency? The operator's voice was calm, a stark contrast to the frantic cries on the other end of the line. Years of experience had taught her to maintain composure, no matter the situation. Please help, it's my neighbor. The smell. Something's terribly wrong. The voice was desperate, each word laced with panic and urgency. Mrs. Peterson, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and nausea, struggled to articulate the horrific scene unfolding next door. She had known the Baileys for years, and the thought of something being wrong was almost too much to bear. Days of unanswered doorbells and a growing stench emanating from the Bailey residence had finally pushed her to call for help. The once pristine yard now looked abandoned, a stark contrast to the well-kept homes around it. The operator, trained to dissect information amidst chaos, quickly dispatched a patrol car to 14 Maple Drive. She knew time was of the essence and every second counted. The address, once associated with bake sales and friendly waves, was about to become synonymous with unimaginable tragedy. The neighborhood, known for its tight-knit community, was on the brink of a shocking revelation. As the patrol car raced through the quiet suburban streets, sirens slicing through the night, a sense of foreboding settled over the neighborhood. The flashing lights reflected off the windows, casting eerie shadows that danced in the darkness. Little did anyone know that this was just the beginning, the first chilling chapter in a story that would leave an indelible mark on their lives. The neighbors, peering through their curtains, felt a shiver of dread, sensing that something terrible was about to unfold. The first responders, hardened by years on the force, were unprepared for the sight that greeted them. They had seen their fair share of tragedies, but nothing could have prepared them for this. The putrid odor, thick and suffocating, hit them like a physical blow as soon as they opened the front door. It was a smell that clung to their clothes, their skin, and their very souls. It was the smell of decay, of life extinguished and left to rot. The sight of rotten food and decayed organic matter only added to the overwhelming sense of neglect and abandonment. It was a smell that spoke of unimaginable neglect and whispered of a horror far greater than they could have anticipated. The moldy walls and decayed interior told a story of despair and hopelessness, a story that was just beginning to unfold. The officers, despite their initial shock, quickly regained their composure. They knew they had a job to do, and they were determined to uncover the truth. One officer spoke into his radio, calling for backup, while another tried to comfort a distressed neighbor who had come to see what was happening. As police tape was put up around the house, more neighbors began to gather outside, their faces etched with worry and curiosity. The officers huddled together, discussing their next steps, knowing that this was just the beginning of a long and grueling investigation. The officers meticulously took notes, examining every piece of evidence they could find. They knew that every detail, no matter how small, could be crucial in solving the mystery of what had happened in the Bailey residence. As the police car drove away, the neighbors were left to speculate about the events that had transpired. Their once peaceful neighborhood was now shrouded in uncertainty and fear, and they couldn't help but wonder what other secrets lay hidden behind closed doors. The sun began to set over the suburban neighborhood, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly. Lights flickered on in the houses, but the sense of unease remained. In one house, a silhouette stood by the window, watching, waiting, and wondering what the future held for their once idyllic community. The police officers, their badges gleaming in the fading light, were determined to get to the bottom of the mystery. As they drove into the night, they knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The next morning, The headlines would tell the story of the tragedy that had struck the suburban neighborhood. Neighbors would read the news with heavy hearts, their faces reflecting the sorrow and fear that had taken hold of their community. But amidst the darkness, there was a glimmer of hope, a determination to uncover the truth and bring justice to those who had suffered. As the sun rose on a new day, the neighborhood began to wake up, ready to face the challenges ahead. Neighbors talked to each other, offering support and comfort, knowing that they would get through this together. The road to healing would be long, but they were determined to walk it, one step at a time. The interior of the Bailey home was a scene ripped from a nightmare. The walls, once painted in cheerful colors, were now marred with grime and peeling wallpaper, revealing the years of neglect and decay that had taken hold. Dirty dishes piled high in the sink, crawling with insects. The stench of rotting food was almost palpable, a sickening blend of sour milk and decaying meat that made the air thick and hard to breathe. Black garbage bags overflowed with rotting food, their contents spilling onto the stained linoleum floor. The floor itself was a patchwork of filth, each step releasing a new wave of foul odors. The air was thick with the buzz of flies, drawn to the overwhelming stench of decay. They swarmed in clouds, their incessant buzzing adding to the oppressive atmosphere of the house. Every surface seemed coated in a sticky film, a testament to weeks, perhaps months of neglect. The countertops were a breeding ground for bacteria, a hazardous mix of old food and grime. Stepping over piles of discarded toys and clothes, the officers moved cautiously through the living room. Each step was a careful maneuver to avoid the scattered debris that littered the floor. The stench intensified as they approached a hallway, leading to what appeared to be a child's bedroom. The walls of the hallway were lined with more trash, making the passage even narrower and more claustrophobic. Holding their breath, they pushed open the door, and the full horror of the situation slammed into them like a physical blow. The sight that greeted them was beyond anything they had ever encountered in their careers. The small bedroom was a tableau of unimaginable neglect. The walls were covered in crayon scribbles and dirt, a stark contrast to the innocence they once represented. Dirty diapers lay scattered across the floor, their contents dried and crusted. The smell was overpowering, a mix of human waste and decay that made the officers gag. Empty food cartons and juice boxes littered the room, attracting swarms of flies. The remnants of meals long past were now a breeding ground for pests, adding to the room's squalor. In the center of it all, lying on a mattress stained beyond recognition, was the source of the unbearable stench. The mattress, once a place of rest, was now a symbol of the neglect and suffering that had taken place. A small, emaciated body, covered in a thin sheet. The child's frail form was a heartbreaking sight, a silent testament to the horrors they had endured. It was a sight that would forever be seared into the minds of the officers, a chilling reminder of the darkest depths of human depravity. The room, the house, the entire scene was a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the devastating impact of neglect. The discovery of the young boy, later identified as 4-year-old Liam Bailey, sent shockwaves through the community. The image of his lifeless body, trapped in that squalid prison, became a haunting reminder of a life tragically cut short. The autopsy report, released weeks later, only deepened the horror. Liam had died from a combination of starvation and dehydration. His tiny body was riddled with bed sores, a testament to the agonizing last days he must have endured. The medical examiner's report painted a grim picture of Liam's final months. He had been severely malnourished, his growth stunted by a lack of proper food. His bones were brittle, weakened by malnutrition. The report concluded that Liam's death was a slow and agonizing one, a fact that only amplified the community's grief and outrage. The question on everyone's mind was simple, yet unbearable. How could this have happened? How could a child have suffered so terribly, right under the noses of their neighbors and community? The search for answers would lead to the boy's mother, Jessica Bailey, and unravel a web of lies, addiction, and a social system that had failed Liam in the most profound way. As the investigation into Liam's death progressed, detectives turned their attention to Jessica Bailey, the boy's mother. They meticulously combed through her life, seeking any clues that could explain the tragic circumstances surrounding Liam's untimely demise. On the surface, Jessica's social media presence painted a picture of a doting single mother. Her profiles were filled with images of a smiling Liam, accompanied by captions proclaiming her unwavering love and dedication. Friends and family saw a woman who seemed to be managing the challenges of single parenthood with grace and strength. However, as investigators delved deeper, a far more sinister reality began to emerge. The cheerful facade that Jessica presented online was a stark contrast to the turmoil that plagued her daily life. Behind the carefully curated online persona, Jessica's life was spiraling out of control. The pristine images and heartfelt posts masked a reality filled with chaos and despair. Her home, once a place of comfort and safety, had become a battleground of her inner demons. A burgeoning addiction to painkillers, stemming from a car accident a year prior, had taken hold. The medication, initially prescribed to manage her physical pain, soon became a crutch for her emotional suffering. Each pill was a temporary escape from the overwhelming pressures of her life. What began as a way to manage physical pain had morphed into a desperate attempt to numb the emotional anguish of her life. Jessica found herself trapped in a vicious cycle, where the need for relief overshadowed her responsibilities as a mother. As Jessica's addiction deepened, so too did her neglect of Liam. The once vibrant and happy child was now left to fend for himself in a home that was falling apart. The laughter and joy that once filled their days were replaced by silence and neglect. Bills piled up, the house fell into disrepair, and Liam's basic needs were ignored. The utilities were often shut off, and the refrigerator was frequently empty. The home, once a sanctuary, had become a place of neglect and despair. Jessica, lost in the haze of her addiction, retreated further into her digital world. She spent hours on social media, crafting posts that depicted a life far removed from her reality. The likes and comments provided a fleeting sense of validation, a stark contrast to the chaos that surrounded her. The stark contrast between her online persona and the horrific reality of Liam's life became a chilling indictment of the deceptive nature of social media and the tragic consequences of unchecked addiction. It was a sobering reminder that behind the filtered images and carefully chosen words, there can lie a world of pain and suffering, hidden from view.